The largest cultural activity in Pakistan is the annual National Folk Festival, Lok Mela, held in Islamabad in October each year. Over the past 2 decades, this festival has taken on an international flavour, and more than 20 different countries have sent their artisans and performers to participate in the festival. Nationally, the festival has become a thing of pride for artisans and performers who come on their own to participate. Most important of all, the provinces of Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir put up beautifully decorated pavilions, and visitors had the unique opportunity to see an assortment of Pakistan's traditionally rich culture in the federal capital of Islamabad for an exciting 10 days. An exhibition of artisans at work under the banner of the Heritage Museum forms the core of this festival. Pavilions of each province depict their own regional culture and crafts. The Research and Media Centre of Lok Virsa arranges groups of dancers that perform all over the festival grounds, inviting visitors to join in, and in the evening arranges music concerts from all parts of Pakistan. This festival is a true depiction of the diversity found in Pakistani culture.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing very well today and you're ready to kickstart your day with me, Muhammad Maktoum, only on World this morning on PTV World and PTV Global. And today we try to keep building up on our shows, especially the last couple of weeks, because as we've seen across the world, there's been a lot of changes politically, socially, there's a lot of things going on. And lately we've been talking about character building, personality building, giving children motivation, and even adults, giving them tools to be able to express themselves. And today is a very important day. It is actually International Day of Tolerance, which was adopted in 1995 by UNESCO when they decided to adopt the Declaration of Principles on Tolerance. And since then, they have been observing that. It's been observed internationally by member states across the world. The whole point of tolerance is about recognizing and respecting other people's beliefs, other people's way of lives, other people's religions, and their cultures. And what we've noticed is that you would think in this, I don't know if it's the age of enlightenment, but it's definitely the age of technology, and it's an era of globalization. So the situation right now is that we've seen that the borders are being all blurred. We're seeing that people are mixing with everyone from across different backgrounds, as I've just mentioned. And what we've noticed is, especially within the media, what we're noticing is that there is a slight increase of intolerance with our fellow man. As we've noticed with certain political situations across the world, especially with UK with Brexit and America with choosing their certain president and the certain party this time round, we've noticed that people have used that as an excuse to discriminate and target people of different backgrounds, which is not really healthy for the society or for a nation. So the whole point of us discussing it is, within Pakistan, we're a developing nation. We've been criticized a lot for not being more inclusive, maybe for targeting certain minorities. So today we're going to be discussing how can we get rid of that, and how can we Pakistanis, the people living within, set an example for the rest of the world to say, well, actually, we have people from all different ways of life, different religions, but we're all inclusive and we work together as a nation. So to discuss what's happening within Pakistan and how we can actually give this message to the rest of the world, we've been joined by some wonderful guests in the studio, and we will be discussing with them the importance of tolerance, how to build it, and how to instill it within every aspect of our lives. To discuss that, we've been joined by Muhammad Ali. He is an entrepreneur and an NLP practitioner. Assalamu alaikum, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Besides Muhammad Ali, we've been joined by Major Ahsan Bashir. He is a social entrepreneur. Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Besides Major Ahsan Bashir, we've been joined by Mariyum Hashim Mubashar. Dr.Mariyum Hashim Mubashar, she is a psychiatrist. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, Salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Besides Dr. Mariyum, we've been joined by Mr. Atle Hetland, who is a social scientist. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to get the conversation started with you, Atle. It's a very important day. It's been observed since, adopted in 1995, observed since 1996. Why is it so important in 2016 to be observing tolerance?
Yes, it is important today, as it was, of course, in 1995, when it was begun by UNESCO. I worked for UNESCO for a number of years myself, and I was here in Pakistan dealing with refugees, Afghans who had come to Pakistan.
Right.
And sometimes there would be negative opinions about Afghans. They are very close to Pakistanis,
Yes.
but still there were differences, so they were not always accepted. And also, the Afghans may have had opinions about Pakistanis.
Right.
And when we talk about tolerance, it, as you said in your introduction, Maha, it is about accepting others, understanding others, but not necessarily agreeing with others. And that is important to be aware of, that tolerance is to accept others' opinions, and they should accept my opinions,
Right.
our opinions, but it doesn't mean that we have to agree.
Okay. Okay, that's a very important point, and I think that's when we kind of get a bit confused. So, Dr. Mariyum, in regards to having an understanding and like as Atle just mentioned, that doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but we just have to accept it. That concept is kind of lost these days, especially internationally, and then I'm sure we'll have the repercussions within Pakistan too. So what is the difference, and how can we address that?
Maha, I'd like to start with the quotation from George Bernard Shaw.
Yeah,
It
please.
says that although all societies are founded on intolerance, all improvement starts and is founded on tolerance. So we need to know that the most important virtue if life and development in the world at large is tolerance.
Okay.
It's basically freedom from bigotry, a permissive attitude to understand other people's opinions, behavior, religion, minorities, ethnicities, just like you portrayed.
Okay.
And we need to know there's a very clear difference between acceptance and tolerability and tolerance.
Okay.
Right? If you say, I can live with this behavior, that's you're tolerating it. You can allow that behavior. But when you accept that, means that's a higher descent on to actually thinking that something is right.
Okay.
So if you say, I can bear this behavior, that's tolerance. But you say, yes, I'm okay and I accept this behavior, that means you're actually tolerating it. So as Sir Atle put it forward, that you don't necessarily have to accept for being tolerant, but you have to tolerate to accept.
Okay, excellent. I really like that. Now, in regards to, Atle's mentioned a very good point. Let's take the refugee situation right now. There's certain countries that are in turmoil. You're seeing an influx of, people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities coming in. How can we build people to the stage that they are tolerating new people coming in, the differences, rather than accepting it? Because I think acceptance is a long way to go.
Well, thank you very much, Maha, for asking me to really comment on this very important aspect. And Atle has mentioned, and he has touched a very sensitive issue at the same time, because this is related to Afghan refugees. No doubt, Afghan refugees is such a thing that it's very close to the hearts of every Pakistani. And Pakistani and Afghanis, they enjoy a lot of good relations. And that was the reason that they migrated in such a huge number. And over 5 million refugees, they came to Pakistan. And once the Cold War was going on. So that is where my point comes in. You see, they were forced to quit And once you are forced to quit, that means it's not because of your own desire and your own choice. They had a very limited choice.
Okay.
They were forced to quit from there. So once you force something on someone and he does a particular behavior comes in shape, then once you are forced onto that. So that if they have come here and they have lived in Pakistan, they may not have, that might not be their first choice, but they had no other choice as well.
Right.
So that is basically a true example of tolerance, I would say, at the hands of the Afghanis that they did. They had to leave there. And the same has happened within Pakistan as well.
Okay.
You see the temporarily displaced people and the IDPs and the TDPs within Pakistan also. So they have a very peculiar behavior which is coming in. But they are very tolerant and they are patient also at the same time. They're patiently handling it. This whole problem comes in internationally, once we see that this kind of thing which you mentioned in your early talk. And that is that once you see the discrimination comes in between the ethnicity, there's a discrimination between the countries, between the people. Someone is preferred, someone is not preferred. So all these preferences, once they go into, and you try to handle the third world people in a different way, you have no laws. International laws are even violated. Like you see the humanity law is the way it is being violated these days in Kashmir. There's no other example of humanity, how it is abused.
Okay.
So once you abuse these kind of things, then that behavior, which probably comes in, the psychiatrist would know better than me, but that is what I feel, what I feel while interacting with the society.
Absolutely.
That comes in.
Absolutely. And the human rights is at one part of the Declaration of Principles as well. But before we move on to that, I want to bring Muhammad Ali into the conversation. As Major Essence pointed out, that even Pakistan has witnessed hardships as well, and we've had a number of refugees come in, and yes, there have been success stories, but then they have also created a lot of problems where you do have certain stereotypes against people from the outside coming in. Now, as a social entrepreneur, how can one work on bridging those gaps? Because let's not pretend, there was discrimination. There are certain ideas. It's like when me living in England, there are certain ideas about my background or how I behave or my family. So how do we get rid of that within Pakistan?
Thank you, Maha, for this opportunity. Maha, before I go into these details, I would like to define the word tolerance.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the International Tolerance Day. One point which Atle mentioned, and I say it in my talks as well.
Yep.
I call it, we need to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we need to learn.
Yeah.
Tolerance to me is very, very simple thing, and that is, I cannot change you.
Yeah.
I cannot change him. I cannot change the world. So who should I change to communicate in a way where the feedback is what I want?
Right, okay.
Right? So I can only change myself. Once I have done that change, then all of these problems, first of all, none of them is a problem, by the way.
Yep.
They are all issues.
Right.
I say that problem is huge and issues are small, issues can be resolved.
Okay.
So none of these issues will be an issue anymore once we know what we are talking about. So
Okay.
charity begins at home, and this has to begin at home as well.
Okay.
Now, whether it's an Afghan refugee or it's a Syrian refugees or it's Kashmir or everything, are we accepting? When I say we, when Afghans came to Pakistan, did we accept them as people in trouble, or did we do, I would say, I use the word like Ahsan, for example.
Okay, are we doing them a favor?
Favor, right?
Okay,
so are we doing them a favor, or we were really doing it for humanitarian purposes?
Okay.
Right? So that's, once we are clear on that aspect, there is no issue.
Okay, so then it's a personal thing as well. Okay, now in regards to tolerance, what we've noticed is that within society, with any society, be it developing, be it developed, being educated, uneducated, to a certain degree, there is discrimination, there is bigotry. This is why we're still observing the day, because UN picks up on days which are issues, and we need to highlight them. So, Atle, how do we begin to get rid of this bigotry? Because look, we can sit here till we're blue in the face. You know, we can say we need to do this, we need to do that, but we're not doing it. You know, we're all educated people here. We all come from work for certain organizations. So how do we now start to bridge that gap? Because these days, what the media is portraying is that there is a huge kind of a divide being created within society.
I think we must partly do what we are doing now. We must talk. We must talk, discuss, disagree often, because also to disagree will take us a step or two further. But even if we disagree, we should tolerate the others' opinions.
Right.
And it's easy to say and more difficult to do. And of course, in everyday life, we have situations where we disagree with friends, with family members, with colleagues, and with politicians, and what they do and what they say.
Yeah.
And we should also accept that there are different opinions, but we should also express our own opinions and define what we think is right. And tolerance, it's based on ethics. So we cannot say, it's now Donald Trump has been elected in America. You could not say his name, but I can say his name.
And, I can say his name, absolutely.
No, but
I don't want to judge him before he's done it.
No, we don't need to touch him, but it is a politician who has had a lot of opinions about others, even about his rival in the presidential election. And maybe she also, Hillary Clinton, had opinions about her rival. And they would express in words that shouldn't be used. So we should also be careful about how we describe each other, and how we define issues, and in all connections with tolerance and with days that the United Nations put on the agenda, we have to let the education systems play a major role. We have to let the media play a major role. But this is also easy to say and more difficult to practice. And finally now to this question, often we pay lip service, but we don't really mean, or maybe we think we mean it. We mean it in seminars and in TV shows.
Yes.
But it's more difficult to follow it ourselves in everyday life, and in the small steps, in the small issues, but also in the big issues, the big political issues.
Absolutely, and this is what we mentioned yesterday, is that when we're talking about character building for children, parents have to lead by example, by doing, not just by saying. Now, I want to bring Dr. Mariyum into the conversation. We're talking about, there's a lot of disagreements in order to evolve and progress forward. But as a psychiatrist, you get exposed, you get to see a lot of people. How do we build within our society the ability to respect or recognize someone else's opinion? Because we can't have a discussion without kind of erupting into arguments, and to the point where certain societies, we're touching upon political correctness as well, being careful with our words as well. People are too scared to really express what they really feel, so it comes out in other ways. So what are we doing? Tell us.
That's a very interesting question, because that's what we're here for today.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about tolerance and ways to combat tolerance, we need to know, as Ali said, that we need to look at ourselves first. Reminds me of the Michael Jackson song about man in the mirror.
Yeah.
So you ask him to change his ways.
Yeah.
So you need to start at an individual level. For example, we're stuck in a traffic. We can't tolerate somebody going faster than us. We can't tolerate somebody not giving us way.
Yeah, guilty. I'm really guilty of that.
Guilty as charged. Yeah. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the most important thing is, again, the parenting styles. And this has to stem from a very young age.
Right.
I remember as a child, we used to hate it when our dad used to say it. But our father was always saying, beta, T for tolerance. We need to give you injectables for tolerating. We need to instill tolerance.
Okay.
And at that time, we thought it's very difficult, but then we do realize that it goes a long way. So I think instilling values in childhood is more important.
Okay.
You must have studied psychology. I know you're related to the field. So the theory of Kohlberg about moral reasoning.
Yeah.
When a child is undergoing moral reasoning and actually developing his or her rights and wrongs, that's when a social contract is signed about this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. But the child also needs to understand that he needs to accept other people, and the sense of agreeableness has to come in then, and that's where tolerance stems from. So starting from childhood, and then we need to know for the world at large, to change the world at large, it needs to be at an individual level, as I've mentioned, childhood level, for example, parents tolerating the behavior of the children, and children then learning to tolerate the food choices or sibling choices, sibling rivalry. That's something that you can't choose from. So tolerability stems from there. And then political tolerance, as Sir Atle has mentioned very correctly. And then tolerating is also coming in from modeling other people.
Okay.
Like you mentioned that the parents are the role models for children. So when they see that the mother is shouting in front of the servants and in front of other people and saying, I can't tolerate this, even the parents amongst each other, when they're not tolerating behavior, that sort of becomes like a role model for the children to follow. And that's when it stems in, and that's when they go out and display that behavior in the society at large.
Okay, and so that's perfect, and leads on to the next point where I want to ask Major Ahsan, because being part of more of the political side of things, we need examples, that to show that we're being tolerant of other people of different backgrounds. You mentioned about the whole refugee situation as well. Do you think that we have adequate role models within the Pakistani framework to show tolerance and to take that forward?
Well, definitely.
It's a tough question.
This is a very political question you have asked.
You have to use a political person, anyone.
Yeah, but I will go for what I think personally.
Yes, please.
I'm not scared on commenting on anything because that is what I do really. I try to project the truth and I try to do that, and that is what my passion is also. So I would say that once you try to pinpoint certain issues of a personality or on personal issues, if you try to hurt someone, you're trying to, like these days on the political arena, what is happening is that one of the political parties, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, they are trying to agitate and they're trying to put pressure on so many fronts to get to one particular goal. But to reach to that goal is okay, but the way to reach or attain that goal probably was not liked by the masses. And that was the reason, like for example, I am a resident of this town. I was born here and grown and all that. I would not like to see the life just getting disturbed in my city every now and then because of certain dharna for some issue. To gain that political mileage is okay, but then there is a way which is given to that, and that is you have a forum, you have the courts, you have to go there and seek justice from there. Because what happens is in a tolerance, justice is very important. If you do not deliver justice, then this intolerant attitude also comes in. Because then I start feeling that I am deprived of my right. And once I'm deprived of my right, then I would like to snatch that right. And that's where the irrational attitude comes in. And that is what is happening basically all over internationally.
Okay, and I'm really glad you picked up on this, whole concept of the society, the nation has to give back to its citizens as well in order to create a peaceful environment. But in regards to this, because it's not just within, let's focus on Pakistan before we touch upon the rest of the world. How does one deal with that situation where externally the factors aren't all on your side? You have economic issues, all these certain security issues, political issues. How do we maintain a sense of acceptance or respect for other ways of life when we can't even have a smooth way of life ourselves?
Okay. As I'll just start from what Major Sahib said, and I'll quote Plato here: where there is no justice, there is crime in the society, right? So yes, one way of doing what you're saying is providing justice.
Right.
That is the key for any society. Secondly, I believe, and I'm sure you'll agree to that as well, our media, with all due respect, we are sitting on the media right now, but our media needs to play a very, very positive role.
Okay.
And when I say positive role, what it means is, where in the world crime doesn't happen, where in the world people are not doing injustice, but where in the world it is being shouted out loud, and I would not say channels names, we know which channels really, make a mockery of the thing and then make it for the TRs, I don't know what they
Ratings,
call them. Ratings, whatever
yeah.
they call them. So I think that
I'm thinking of a restaurant right now, food restaurant. I can't remember the actual official name. Sorry, guys, continue.
Yeah. So basically what I mean is that if the media says, and this is not only for the media, this is for general public. If we are 4 or 5 people sitting out here and we start saying everything is good, society is good, times are good, people are improving, eventually our unconscious will start believing everything is good.
Okay.
Right? But if we keep on saying, oh, things are bad, environment is bad, Pakistan is bad, this is bad, so we are being pressured. There's a marketing term called pressure marketing.
Okay.
So we are being
people are
pressured.
being forced into a certain way.
Some
okay.
mind frame.
Okay. Now I want to talk about
Sorry,
this.
ma'am, before you
yes.
go on, I would like to quote one very small example, and which is very pertinent to be mentioned here, and that is the example you asked for a personality. If comes to my mind, there's no bigger personality for a tolerance which can be coming to my mind is Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. See, he basically gave examples, self-examples of tolerance, the way he was treated and all that. I think as a Muslim, that is what strike my mind.
Absolutely, and the saddest thing is that we do have this great example, who we should be following. Yet, a lot of people don't follow that way of life or those practices, and I think a lot of Muslims are guilty of that as well, and non-Muslims too. But I want to ask Dr. Mariyum, this whole idea, so you need the external factors in order to, be psychologically sound mind, and that will give you a good approach to life. But when you don't have those things, and when you do have certain external factors, like the media saying this is bad, and because the thing is, there's a lot of complaining here, there's not a lot of doing. We like to complain, but we don't like to change the system. So is that the right approach? Do we start saying, oh no, everything's good, and that will help us become more tolerant? Or?
I think, Maha, we always talk about Maslow's hierarchical needs and the need.
I'm tired of hearing about Maslow.
But
we need to find something new.
I mean, the more I focus on it, the more I think of it, the more I realize how true it is.
Yep, that's
Somebody
true.
whose basic needs are not met with, biological needs of sleeping, eating, then there's no justice, no sense of belongingness. How do you expect them to go to the level of self-actualization in which tolerance actually comes in, you see?
Right.
So if your basic needs are not met with, we don't have a car to travel, we don't have food to eat, how do we expect that person to be psychologically and physically emancipated in a society and to functioning well?
Absolutely. That's a really good point. But now, the thing is, Atle, we've been talking about that, the external factors, and you said, the media plays a huge role in combating this situation, and education. Now, what we've noticed is that even when the curriculum isn't perfect, there are problems. Even when you have leading nations, they have an education system that people from across the world travel to, yet they're still also their societies facing problems of intolerance, of, abusing human rights and, mistreating their own citizens. What's happening? What chance does anyone have? But although I will say one thing I noticed when I went up to Hunza is that that's a very inclusive, very tolerant society, very tolerant area. So kudos to them.
Yes, I'm very glad that you mentioned remote areas as being perhaps sometimes more tolerant than the big cities, where we think we are so tolerant, we meet everybody, we are so international, and we
pretend.
And that is very interesting. And sometimes we also think that well-educated people are more tolerant than people with less education. It's not always the case. And to mention Germany in the 1930s, before the Second World War, they were the best educated people on earth that time. But they could still have very strange ideas, and not all of them, but the leaders that time.
Okay.
And then I would perhaps also emphasize that the state must be tolerant. And that means the education system must emphasize tolerance. The justice system must be just. There must be fairness. And how the leaders behave and what they say is very important.
Okay.
And you are a role model as an anchor of a TV show. It's very important function.
Right.
And there are many opinion leaders in the society who must be very careful. And then, of course, and portray the right values and attitudes that we want to be portrayed and that the state wants to stand for.
Okay.
Then, but let me just mention,
yes, please.
Although I have a tendency to speak.
No, please, you're fine.
Give a speech, but we can also risk that we say things and we don't then listen to what people really think. And I think the elections in America and in Europe also nowadays, there are suddenly opinions that come out which are totally against what we thought were the real values of the people. Okay. And then that is also scary. And how this happens, I don't really know. I was yesterday evening and a bit this morning working on my newspaper column for tomorrow in the Nation newspaper in Pakistan about some of these issues. And it is, I don't think that people are as intolerant, as extreme as it sometimes comes out now. We have for a long time thought everything was fairly okay. We were going in one direction, and then certain opinions come out contradicting it, and extreme opinions about race, about gender, about things that we thought we had been able to solve and we had talked enough about, so that we had come a step further. But then all of a sudden there are opinions that we disagree with so much that come out.
Okay, and this is a very important point that you raised, and I'd like to highlight this, and I wanted to ask this to Dr. Mariyum, is Atle, and also Atle as well, and actually everyone, anyone can answer, but I'll start with Dr. Mariyum. This whole that, all of a sudden this has come up and, people are voicing these certain intolerant ideas or views on life. Now, the thing is, if you look at certain people or the people who are being targeted basically in this whole, the targets of the intolerance, they've been saying this for a long time. Now, we're sitting here saying, oh, this is all of a sudden, but if with hindsight you look at it, people have been saying things, there's a gradual build-up. Now, this whole pretense, this political correctness, the fact that we have to be careful with our words or this and that, and someone may not accept it, they may get offended. How much of an impact does it have on someone's psyche? Because if you're being constantly controlled, then obviously you're going to get agitated and you're not going to tolerate anyone else because you can't truly express who you are.
I agree. Well, that's a very valid question, but you can't deny the role of individual personalities when it comes to tolerance as well, you see. Not every person can be put in the same boat. We can't say how is it affecting the psyche of Mr. Ali, Major Ahsan, Mariyum, Atle, Maha. So it has to be an individual perspective, right? Okay. You talk about, you must have heard of the 5-factor model, ocean, openness, conscientiousness,
rings a bell,
agreeableness and neuroticism, right? Okay. So every person on his or her domain in their personalities, the multi-dimensional personalities, have their own ratings of agreeableness and tolerance. The paradoxical question that arises, is a happy person tolerant or is a tolerant person happy? So you see, it's sort of an individualistic perspective. There are a lot of people who tolerate different things in a different way. And when you're talking about the social intolerance that's developed, which is the second part of your question, you see, like a matchstick, once you strike it, it spreads. The fire spreads fast.
That's true.
So one person's influence can first lead to influence on the children and the family, then the extended family, then the society, and then the country at large, and then the world at large. Okay. So that's how it spreads.
Yes, Ali.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just like to take from what Dr. Mariyum was saying. which actually strengthens the initial comment which I made, that one person's opinion expands, right?
Yeah.
Now, if in total, and I'll quote an experiment which I read when I was in grade 8. There was a child, I think it's a very unjust experiment, but science does experiments. So a child, after his birth, was immediately put in a room, and the only sound that child heard for 3.5 years was a donkey.
Right.
And when the child...
Where is this place? Because I think they should be arrested. Where was this experiment? Yeah, sorry, go on.
And this was part of her textbook, by the way. So when the child, started speaking or behaving, the only mannerism or the only talk he could do was donkey sound.
Okay.
Right? So, which leads me to the point that when media says bad, people say it's bad. I mean, I had a talk for one of my company staffs a month ago on the same issue. Oh, situation is very bad, market is bad, customers are not coming. I said, this is a time of opportunity. When you think things are going bad, that is where you need to raise yourself up.
Exactly. They need to be more creative and get better
Exactly,
marketing
right?
team.
Because what happens is that we have two parts of our brain. One is the creative brain, and one is our imaginative brain, and one is the analytical brain.
Yeah.
So we tend to be more left brain, which is more analytical. 1 + 1 = 2, forgetting that it is only 25%. 75% we kill from childhood. For example, 5 years old, sitting under the table, saying, I'm opening a car, you will say, wow, what an imaginative child. But a 25-year-old does that, you'll say, he's gone crazy.
Yeah.
Maha, the human mind is the powerhouse of the body.
Okay.
And 1 second, there are billions of thoughts that come up. But even the mind is trained in such a way, is tolerant enough to sort of shun away the other billions of thoughts and just bring 2,000 into awareness at one time, the conscious mind. So if the human mind, which is about 3 to 4 pounds in weight and 15 centimeter by length, if that is able to, that's learnt in such a way, it's a biological mechanism of tolerating how to shun some thoughts and bring to awareness some. Society should do
Okay, so now in regards to this, continuing your point about about the brain. Now, bringing back to the education, when the education system is teaching you a certain thing, and you're being conditioned, your brain is being conditioned to react a certain way, behave a certain way. How do you then start to undo that? Because that's what we're noticing, that we now looking at the whole anywhere in the world, we have to kind of go backwards now, because things aren't really going the way we wanted them to, based on the systems and the education that we have. Can you undo learned practices? Can you undo this intolerant behavior? Like, for example, I will take America now as an example, because my examples are better from there. With Pakistan, it's a bit more difficult. But because everyone knows, because from the films, you have, the South, which some people can be extremely racist, just like in certain areas in Pakistan, people can be very prejudiced. Someone like that, can you change them to become a tolerant member of society, respecting other people's views and ideas?
Maha, I think the main mold that we have to form is the future generations.
Okay, so you're saying give up on the
You can't change somebody's personality. Behavior can be molded. You can learn. You can make them. You can't make them or can't force them to accept. But yes, you can sort of make them tolerate.
Okay.
Right.
You can do that then?
Yeah, you can do that. But you can't change somebody's personality as a whole.
Okay.
Personality it's almost done by the age of 5 years. You have to instill that from early childhood.
And that's what we've been discussing on our show as well. So now, Atle, now going forward, because it is our last few moments, I want to get final words from everyone. What do you think we need to do now? Because, it is... it's been this situation for a long time, but people want to move forward, especially the ones who feel the brunt of the intolerance. The minorities suffer, and we've learned, we don't seem to have learned our lessons from the past.
No, the more fair we are to each other, the more tolerant we will be. The more unfair a society is, the more intolerant that society risks to become.
Okay.
And of course there is a lot of differences in the world, and growing differences in many places also. But I think to de-learn is difficult, to learn new things is easier, and I think we can do it. We can discuss, we can talk, we must keep the show going, the talk going. And then perhaps, since I earlier mentioned that the state must be fair, the opinion leaders must be fair, must be tolerant. And it's tolerance towards non-violence, or we want to be non-violent, we want to be tolerant, all of us. And then I was glad that this year, the prize that UNESCO awards every other year on the Tolerance Day went to a Russian Institute for Tolerance.
Wonderful.
And that was very good, because the West has a tendency today to criticize Russia, I think often unfairly.
And that's the Madan Jeet Singh Prize for the promotion of tolerance and non-violence, correct?
Yes,
that's the one they give every 2 years.
And the Singh was born in Lahore in Pakistan.
Exactly, wonderful.
Yeah. So that is also, we should also be proud of him. And UNESCO is extremely proud of him.
Wonderful, thank you. We're very, very short of time, so quickly, I'm going to come back to you, Mariyum, because I have one final question for you. But Major Ahsan, final words for everyone who's watching today.
Well, I fully agree with what Atle was saying, that a society will be tolerant once you accept and once you give the rights, and you don't really be indiscriminate. And internationally, people, those who really matter, they are also responsible for this kind of racism or this kind of unrest which we see in the entire world. They are responsible, like they are trying to do it the way he's mentioned in 2016, an award has been given to Russians, you know, one of the Russians. So that is like they're trying to bridge now, and they have understood that this problem can be only resolved, whether internationally or domestically. You start giving rights. And for the parents, I would say, you need to educate parents for accepting what their children are like, and that freedom of expression, I don't mean to say that that should be out of the context or anything, but then that should be given.
Absolutely.
And that should be respected also.
Absolutely. Ali?
I think I would sum up this whole talk by Mariam's dad's quotation. T for tolerance. We need to change the alphabetical explanation of the words.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much. And Mariam, final question. How much does ego or the superiority complex play a role in intolerance or tolerance?
The question is amazing, but again, you need a whole program for that question.
We will have a program, but I want you to give me a few sentences.
But you know, the id, basically the principles of Freud, id, ego and superego. So id is basically the basic instincts that need to be fulfilled so you know what is right and what is wrong. Superego is what decides between what is right and wrong.
Okay.
And ego is balancing.
Okay, so where are we? Where would you say we are right now?
I think we haven't even fulfilled the needs for the id yet.
Okay, so we're a long way away. And any final words you'd like to say to everyone today?
I think just I would focus on being the change that you want to see in the world.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you guys today on a very important day. So everyone, I hope you took something from the show. At the end of the day, we have to start from ourselves, and it's about acceptance. You don't have to agree with it, but just let someone think what they want to think. As long as it's not hurting or harming anyone else, let them live their lives, respect their ways, their culture, their religion, and their beliefs. So with that, you log onto our Facebook fan page, which is with the name of World This Morning, Twitter, World This Morning without a G, Daily Motion and YouTube page, World This Morning, and the repeat is at 11:05 p.m. this evening, and we will see you bright and early tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.